welcome back. Oh, good to have you back. Here's a question for you. When you work on your books, if you're, of course, a writer, do you work with a partner? What if you worked with someone who you were married to and you're both writers? Well, guess what? We have a couple on the show today, both writers, both great in their own rights, both friends. My name is Dacquino. Our guests today are the Berliners. Susan, Larry, what a pleasure. So great to have you here. Recently, we were at a book signing together, and you reminded me of what great guests you would be. Susan, you were on the show back in the day when it was called Let's Talk Writing. Got to be 4 or 5 years ago.
Yep.
And since then, you've been writing still. Susan, what have you been doing? Talk to me about your writing.
Okay, Vinny. Thank you so much for having me on again.
Thank you for coming back.
If you recall, I started writing with a book called Dust.
Yeah, great book.
Thank you. I started Dust when I left my full-time job, and I had an idea for a book, and I never thought I would be, I was always a writer, let me go back to that, but I never thought I'd be a novelist. But I found a little article about a dust devil, which is a mini tornado, imploding an auto body shop, and it happened on a clear, quiet day. And in the little article, the police officers said, weird things happen on calm, quiet days. And I thought, this is so weird. And it happened in Maine. So I thought Stephen King, one of my favorite authors, would write a story about that. Well, when I left my full-time job and he hadn't, I realized he didn't write the book, and I had an idea. And that turned into Dust, which is a story about a dust devil terrorizing a condo complex, and a librarian, her ex-husband, and a dog trying to figure out how to kill this evil creature, this dust devil. So that was my first book, Dust. And we talked about that
Yeah,
then.
we talked about that. It was great. Went over well.
My second book was Peachwood Lake, also based on a newspaper article. This one, though, a front page story in the New York Times, a cover story called Summertime Fish Jumping, That's Trouble. It was about sturgeons, Gulf sturgeons, that jump out of the water in the Suwannee River in Florida, and they injure people because they're big and bony and weigh like 200 pounds, and scientists don't know why. So that's,
and that became the basis of a novel.
That was the basis of my novel, Peachwood Lake, which is about this evil fish that infiltrates an imaginary river.
Dust devils and fish that hurt people.
Yeah.
I don't know, Susan.
I know. I have a weird kind of imagination.
That's the other Susan.
Yes. So this book is about a young girl, and she's being terrorized by a bully. At the same time, this fish is terrorizing the lake. So it's kind of a combination horror, coming-of-age story. In fact, one reviewer called it a marvelous coming-of-age horror story. So that was that.
It's funny. That reminds me of a young boy who said to me, what am I supposed to write about? And I said, write about what if. And you are master at that, writing about what if. What if these fish, what if these dust devils? So then, after you did those two books.
After I did that, then I kind of went right into my imagination and picked something that I love writing about, which is time travel. I love time travel.
Time travel, me too.
I love
me
that.
too.
Because you can do anything you want with time travel, because nobody can prove it's right.
And it's a real what if.
It really is. And you could time travel in so many different ways. So my book is called The Disappearance, and it's about a young woman.
The Disappearance, yep.
It's about a young woman who's framed for her boyfriend's murder when he disappears into time. And then it's a matter of her trying to get him back.
Great cover, by the way.
Oh, thank you. trying to get him back in time and trying to get him to capture him and bring him back so they could prove that she's innocent.
Wow.
So it's got an element
No,
of.
it's a step away from you. That's
Yeah.
a little different from what you normally.
Well, I was going away from reality and nature into this time travel thing.
And this mystery, which is really good.
And the last about third of the book is kind of like a big sting operation. If you remember the movie The Sting, one
Yeah,
of my favorite
sure.
movies with Paul Newman and Robert Redford.
Yeah.
This is a sting.
Two little known actors.
So it's a lot of fun. Then I think since I have spoken to you, my next novel is called Corsonia. And that's,
Corsonia.
Corsonia. That's a strange little place in northeastern Nevada. I moved away from the...
Another good cover, by the way.
Thank you. I moved away from the northeastern part of the United States into northeastern Nevada. And I've got, there are two teenage girls. They graduate.
Now, why that location?
Well, it's got to have. Well, this is a picture of a mine. It's got to have mines in there.
Oh, okay.
And it's a story. It starts out, in fact, in an abandoned mine because they're going across country and they start taking pictures of abandoned mines, and this turns out to be this strange place, as I said, called Corsonia, an imaginary place.
Yeah, there's no real Corsonia.
No,
so we don't call up our travel agents and try to get tickets to Corsonia.
No. But they find out that very bad things are happening to this place. They meet a little boy, and his name is just Boy 12, and very strange things are happening there. Somebody is messing with the people's minds. And they have to kind of save this town of Corsonia, from evil taking over. And unfortunately, this is the kind of thing that really could happen because you can mess with people's minds. All sorts of drugs.
You've been messing with my mind for years, Susan.
Well, then my next book, I changed again, and I have a book of short stories. It's called The Sea Crystal and Other Weird Tales.
There it is. The Sea Crystal and Other Weird Tales.
I have, I believe, 14 short stories. And they're not all horror. There's some humorous stories there. There are thrillers. There are sci-fis. There are fantasy, fairy tales.
So it's a collection of stories. It isn't one continuous novel.
No, it's not. But they're all kind of weird. They all basically have a little element of supernatural, I think all except one. And they're all kind of strange.
I like the supernatural.
And the reason I started writing these stories is I was working on my next book, which just came out after The Bubbles. And I got very tired with this book, yes. This book took me like 7 years to write.
Wow, is that right?
Well, because it morphed into two books. And this one is an end of the world story.
So the world ends in a bubble, huh?
Well, other people end worlds in different ways. They have planets blowing up. They have a lot of zombies now. You have deadly diseases, nuclear war, alien invasions. So I thought...
And those are all real.
I thought I'd do something a lot more gentle and kill people in a gentler way. So I have these bubbles falling. And they turn people into monsters that my main character calls touchers. In this book, for the first time, I have a protagonist she's a teenager. A lot of my protagonists are teenage girls, but the story is told in the first person. So Erin is the one telling the story. And after a while, having a 15-year-old girl in my head became very tiresome. So that's why I started writing short stories. I had to leave this book for long periods of time.
Isn't it amazing how your stories can haunt you?
It was amazing.
Yeah, it gets pretty haunting.
So I would read this book and I'd work on it and I'd go back and write another short story and then I'd write another short story and another one and another one. And it kind of, I'd go back to this book and I finished which I called The Touchers at the time, after The Bubbles. I got to the end of it, and the character at the end of this book says, "This is only the beginning." And I said, oh my God, I just wrote 75,000 words, and now I've got to write more? and I wrote another book, which is the second part of this, which hasn't been published yet.
Oh,
So that's part one of the Touchers after the Bubbles, and I'm writing a second book called Soldier Girl. I actually have written it, it's edited. But during this time, I've been writing short stories. I have another short story collection that I've
Susan,
written.
you don't believe in spare time, do you?
Oh, but it's fun. It's a lot of fun.
Yeah, it is fun. So all the while that you're writing, there's this guy you're married to who was a teacher, and he decided to do a little writing of his own. Larry, talk to me about who you are and how that became a pretty serious book.
Well, first of all, unlike Susan, who never thought of writing a novel, I had always thought about writing a novel, and not just any novel. I've always wanted to write the great American novel. It's always been my dream.
And this is it?
And this book is not it. Okay, and there's a whole story about how I went from one dream to another, in effect, and I assume that I'll be speaking with you later.
And the good news is this book actually won an award.
It did, actually. Yes, it was an Indie Book Award in the category of humor. A far cry from where I started out. There was a long road, and a long winding road from one to the other.
So it's a series of stories
Yes,
or incidents, and you're actually going to read a little piece for us?
sure.
Give us a little taste of what you have here.
Okay. Well, the stories range from my inglorious moments as an ROTC cadet in City College many years ago. The main part of the book is mostly about my time in teaching. I spent 3 decades teaching in the Bronx.
Teaching English in the Bronx.
Teaching English
so
in
you
the
are
Bronx.
a veteran of educational war.
Yes, might say so. Some of the, as I say on the back, some of the most challenging and rewarding moments in my life
Wow.
were
Yeah.
during my teaching career.
I taught for 35 years.
Yeah.
English, love
Right.
it.
I did love it. And all the time I'd always dreamt of writing the great American novel. So one day I finally retired, and it was time to put this stuff down on paper, and I sat down. I'd collected so many ideas through the years. Many of them I wrote down and promptly misplaced, and others I just submitted to memory and forgot most of those. But I still had plenty of ideas left, and I knew that someone with the background that I had, I'd been writing, along with Susan, we'd been writing educational material for years and years and years. I mean, just as long as I can remember. So I figured, how could I miss? So this is how I missed. I sat down to write the book. I wrote a few chapters, and I asked Susan, do me a favor, please take a look at this and see what you think of it. Let me have your honest opinion.
Uh-oh.
Yeah, well, we always consult each other. Well, unfortunately, that's exactly what she did. And she explained to me that in a novel, we really have to care about the main character. And she didn't. So I said, well, I better go back and look this thing over a little bit and see maybe there's something I can do. And I looked it over, and I decided that I didn't really care about the main character that much myself.
Yeah.
Or where the book was going, or his point of view. So I worked on it and tried to improve it, and then every time the more I worked on the novel the more I proved to myself that I was not going to be a novelist. This was not my thing. And I was very, very disappointed, because this has been a lifelong dream to write the great American novel. How could it miss? It did. And Susan told me, she said, look, you don't have to be a novelist. And I thought to myself, thank God. And she said, you tell stories, yes, the stories you tell, they're funny, you have a good sense of humor. Why don't you put together a bunch of these stories and make that your book? So it sounded good, but somehow the idea of going from the great American novel to a bunch of goofy little stories didn't get me very, very excited, right? And I did it sort of half-heartedly. Meanwhile, Susan decided to try her hand at writing, And as she told you, I like to say that we've written 7 books between us, and she's written 6 of them. But
Well, you did do 7 between you.
but she had no idea. Excuse me. She had no idea how good a writer she was, and she wrote a few chapters and gave it to me and said, "Give me your honest opinion about of the book." And this was not that long after she'd already told me that my book sucked, and but I decided that I would be kind. So I read the chapters, and after reading them, I said, "Where did this come from?" And I said, "Susan, you got to write this book. This is terrific." And I knew right then that there was indeed going to be a novelist in our family, and it wasn't going to be me. So she went on, she wrote the book, and she went on to write many others, and one was better than the other, and they were just terrific, and I loved them. I became the editor-in-chief and the designated proofreader, and I drove it to book signings, and I handed out bookmarks and made change for the customers and took pictures. So I consider myself a novelist by marriage.
There you go.
Yeah. And but all the while, Susan knew that something was missing. I wanted to write something, and I didn't feel that novel writing was for me. So I went back to these goofy little stories, and I worked on them, and I improved them. And the more I worked on them, the more I improved them. I did do it for a while. And I see Susan was much more, disciplined, yeah, than I was, and more structured than I was. She would set aside a time every day.
Yeah, I'm going to talk to you about that because much of our audience is very interested in the how-to of writing.
Right.
And it's so different for so many different people.
Right.
I write in the middle of the night. I get up at 2, 3 o'clock in the morning.
Yeah.
No one's around, and it's my peaceful time. Kat and I are the only ones awake, and I get more done. When do the two of you write? Do you have a? You said you have a specific.
She does it the right way, so she's the one.
Well, there's no right way.
There is no right way.
Okay,
that's the point.
No right
There's
way.
no right way. You've got to understand that.
But if I'd done this differently, perhaps it wouldn't have taken me 10 to 15 years to write a
Yeah,
book
and you
like
may
this.
not have gotten an award for it either.
That's
right.
true.
You see?
That's true.
Well, I'm very happy with the way
Yeah.
it turned out. I mean, it was,
Well,
Why don't
give
you
us a taste.
read the story? Read that.
and obviously there are 11 different stories in this book,
Okay.
and the main story is about teaching, because that's what I was really set out to write about. But that's one of 11, and there are 10 other stories here. Because
Okay.
the full title is that an inner city teacher amuses about school and life.
Oh,
And so, not to mislead anybody into thinking that this is just about a school teacher, although it seems to attract book signing seems to attract school teachers more than others. I can't imagine why, but
yeah.
there must be something about the cover. But it's on a number of different subjects that my wife says that I'm sort of an Andy Rooney type.
All right.
I complain about the different things that
So
bother
this
me.
is
and all.
from a quip.
And this is
a quip from one of those
This
stories.
is one. Yeah, well, I was in the ROTC in City College, and when we went to summer camp, I went with all good intentions, and as it turned out, I came up with a lot of humorous stories which weren't meant to be, but that's what happened. This is an example of one where we were from time to time, each member of the platoon was given a squad to lead, and given an assignment. And our sergeant came over to me and showed me a map, and told me that I was to take this hill. And I was never very good at map reading, and this map, I think, really would have intrigued Magellan, because there was no way I could make any sense out of it. I was looking for like an X on the hill or something, or a little red dot that said "You are here." No, none of that. I looked at it and said, "Do you understand?" "Yes, Sergeant, I understand." I understood nothing. So at any rate, Later in the day, I took my squad. We charged the hill, and somehow we managed to take the hill. So pick it up from there. I proudly faced my giddy squad and spoke words I had always dreamed of saying, along with, let's make this a true daily double. Take 5, smoke if you got 'em. Now this, you remember, was back in the 60s when we didn't know as much about smoking, so this was a popular phrase. Then I assumed the well-earned position of conquering hero and stretched out on the grass overlooking my newly acquired terrain. My reverie was broken by the blinding reflection of sunlight off a pair of outrageously overpolished shoes. Squad leader Berliner, raged the full-bird colonel. I jumped to attention and saluted. Yes, sir. What was your mission? Take the hill, sir. What hill, mister? This hill? I prayed. Do you see that hill out there beyond the Ramafras trees? No, but yes, sir. Do all these hills look alike to you, mister? Carbon copies. No, sir. You took the wrong damn hill, mister. How the hell could you take the wrong damn hill? No excuse, sir. I resisted the temptation to state the obvious. It was easy. Nobody was shooting back at us. And so it went with my ROTC. And the other stories are about a variety of different topics. As I say, the main one is about teaching. And I want to hog all the time, but
Why don't you tell what some of the other stories are about?
well, okay. There are several stories about communication, which I know you're interested in. One about verbal communication, which I think is been a big drop off.
Yeah, that's true.
People saying things like, "I hear you, I feel you, I know, I've been there, I've done that," and it's sort of a way of not listening and showing, sort of seeming to show that you have an interest. Telephone tag, where I talk about how Alexander Graham Bell would be turning over in his grave if he heard some of the things that go on the telephone communications these days. And then cell privileges, which I don't even want to get started on because I have so many examples of the cell phone has become more of an annoyance.
A whole new world. So let me ask you, is there another book in the works, Larry?
You know, when I finished this, I was happy with this. I said that was the end of it. You know, and people keep asking me, you know, you're going to write another book, and I was just relieved to get through with this. But now I find myself jotting down things as I go along, and if I can put enough things together, enough ideas together, I think Susan could probably help me, as she did with this, take a whole lot of disparate ideas, and maybe we can make it into another one.
So I'm going to ask you both.
Yeah.
Again, Susan, you write at a specific time during the day.
Yes.
When is that?
I write in the morning at about 10 to 11, pretty much.
Okay.
I lock the door. I close, like you say, the middle of the
You
night.
keep him out of there.
Oh, nobody comes in. I take the phone out of there.
Good
The
idea.
shades are down. There are no distractions. I don't get off the internet. And I just sit, turn on the word
Yeah.
processor, and I just write.
I love it. I love what you're saying. I tell people that when it's time to write, I go there. And that's what it is. It's a separate world, and I'm in that world, and that's where I want to be. I remember the days when I was actually teaching. I would sit down after dinner and until my wife tapped me on the shoulder and says, "Better take a shower. You have to go to work in an hour." You know, and I would write straight through the night. It's another world. It's another place. And as we said before, nobody's the same.
No.
When do you write, Larry?
Well, and I was thinking when you mentioned that if I had ever tried to write at 3 o'clock in the morning,
You'd be asleep at the
it
keyboard.
would look at, because I don't wake up peppy or happy or whatever else in the middle of the night. So I would write as ideas came to me. Some ideas came to me just when I'm riding in my car, sometimes when I was walking on the treadmill, and I rushed to write these ideas down and just put them together. When I had enough ideas, I'd sit down and try to put make a story
In
out
other
of it.
words, you
But it
don't
was-
have a writing time.
Exactly.
You write when it
none.
hits you.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I hear you.
I could give a talk on how not to write it.
Now, Susan, you're in the middle of a new book now.
Well, I'm writing short stories now. That's my
right.
creative writing. But I am editing, as I said, the second book of the Touchers series, which is called Soldier Girl. They finished with the first part, and as I said, my character insisted it's only the beginning, and now I have 90,000 words. in the
Isn't it
second book.
amazing how your characters live in your head?
Yep.
And they really do tell you what to do?
Mine do. I know it's
Mine do
like
too.
A lot of novelists have that,
Yeah.
that they do. And that's why I said Erin got annoying at times. I mean, after all, she's a teenage girl, and I'm writing as her. And that's why I think it took me so incredibly long to write these two books.
Yeah.
So,
Well, I have some bad news for you two. We have 2 minutes left.
oh my goodness.
Something that you haven't said that you want to say to this audience.
Well, I'd like them to know if they have any more questions about things that I do. They can go see my website.
You do
which
have a
is-
website, so they
yes.
can contact you through the website.
Yes.
You'd be willing to talk to young writers?
Oh, definitely.
Give advice?
Yes, I do, and I have spoken in schools, and also I do have a blog. I blog about writing.
Wonderful.
And that's about every 5 days. I have.
Now, how do we get to your blog?
It's on my website, which is
Good.
www.susanberliner.com. I
Okay.
also have contests there.
And we can get a hold of Larry through yours as well.
Larry, there's a page on my website that says you can't be serious, and you can read about Larry's books
Great.
and his reviews, and you can contact him also through my website.
Sounds
So,
terrific.
yeah.
So you two are going to keep on writing, keep doing your thing. We were together recently at a book signing, so you're still doing book signings. You're
Yes.
around. So
Yes.
if people want to talk with you in person, they can do that. Well, you two need to keep on doing what you're doing. Great books, great reading, great people. Thank you so much for being with us today, for sharing some of your experiences. Wonderful books. You need to keep reading the Berliners, and you need to listen to some of the things they said about writing what you feel. You want to be a writer? Write. Talkers talk. Writers write. You're not a writer until you write. Thank you for joining us. Thank you for being here today. Stay tuned for other great writers, other great guests. Pleasure to be here. What a treat.
Thank you
Thank
so
you.
much, Benny.
Thank you,
Thank
Ben.
you.